Hello, everybody. It's me, your Lich Jr., and we are back with the Mite No podcast. Episode, I don't know, one of them. We're under 20, that's for sure, but get in there. And with today, I have a Rudy. Say hello, Rudy.
Hello.
Awesome, thank you. Today, we're going to be covering episodes 81 through 85. Let's dive right in. Episode 81 begins with a bit of a recap. And then Nami has devolved into what I described in my notes as the delirious lesbian, which I found very funny. Um, and basically, the bunnies are being really annoying right now. Luffy and Sanji are in pressure right now. Luffy isn't able to fight, and Sanji keeps telling him to run, but don't retreat. And Luffy's like, how am I supposed to do that? Which is very funny. But basically, they're trying to get up the mountain, and the bunnies are sort of pushing them further away, and Luffy can't fight, or else he risks hurting Nami. So Luffy's in a situation where he has to keep trying to run away, but he has to try and run away in the direction they need to go. And that is causing some problems.
You're
Uh,
right.
so yeah,
You just pulled over the time.
we have some good interactions with Luffy and the rabbits, the Lupin, or whatever they were called, the Lapon. I did enjoy a
Oh yeah.
moment where Luffy was taunting them. I found very funny. And Sanji calling him out on it when it pisses the rabbits off and just makes them hunt them harder. That was a very good moment. We cut away from the rabbit shenanigans back to the town where Dalton discovers, thanks to the big old lady that Usopp mistakes for a hiking bear, because he does that shtick again where he bows to her like she's a hiking bear. That Kureha, the doctor, isn't up on the mountain. She's actually in the next town over. Um, and we then cut to the doctor, and we see, for the very first time, Chopper, who is walking alongside her. Uh, Chopper is a name that we've probably said a fair bit on this podcast here and there. Um, so Chopper appears to be some sort of reindeer or elk-like creature who is walking along with the doctor. Uh, who promptly punches down the door to a tavern in which there is a child who is crying. Um, and she shows up, and she has a stick that she loves to do, and we'll see it a lot over the next few episodes. But she opens conversations with people about or she constantly makes reference to the fact how she's only in her young 130s. Um, and always brings up oh, did you want to know the secret to my youth? And everyone's response is always universally no, which I just find very funny. We get a little more interaction with Dalton, who is once again hinting about an event that occurred with the doctors. We haven't at this point got the drop on what that was. Um, we cut back to Kureha, and she's there trying to help the child. Um, and she's preparing him for some sort of operation, and they ask about some sort of anesthetic for the child, and Chopper bonks him on the head with his antlers. And I really like that. I found it very funny. She ends up healing the kid, curing him, giving them medicine to continue his treatment, and then for her fee, she says she'll take basically some garbage bags, some of their food, wine, and oh yes, half of everything you own. Uh, which is quite the escalation that she goes from, oh, I'm out of garbage bags and I could use some food. Also, I love me some wine, so baby's gotta have her sip. And also, half of all of your assets. Thank you. Um, and there's a moment where the town is getting mad at her, and they're calling her like a scam and whatnot, and they're like, it's a scam, don't pay it, and like getting really mad at her. And Chopper growls like a dog, which fucking I found very funny. Like they very clearly used a dog audio cue for Chopper growling, and I found that fucking hilarious. However, then we get this beautiful moment where the man whose son she just cured, who was probably going to die, at least she says he was going to die, um, he's like, again, like aghast that she's trying to take 50% of everything he owns. And then his kid wakes up and he just smiles and thanks Dr. Kreha for saving him and taking the pain away. And it's this beautifully cute moment where Kreha looks at the kid and everyone else looks at the kid, and the dad is just like, oh shit, my son literally could have died. Why am I caring if this woman just wants to take 50% of everything I own? It wasn't worth my kid. Like, why am I even fighting about this? And there's just this great moment where she looks at the kid and says, hey kid, how happy you feel right now, I want you to remember it for the rest of your life. And the kid's just like, yeah. And it's cute. Uh, and then she says, that was a nice tip. I'll only take 49% of everything you own. And then her and Chopper leave, which is great. Rudy, we're getting a little weird feedback on your mic there. Rudy, Rudy.
Oh no, it's happening again. My mic's going haywire again.
Yeah, it's doing some weird
Oh, this
static.
happens very rarely, but it happens sometimes. Let me
Okay.
mute. Hopefully, it'll sort itself out.
Okay, thank you. Oh, hold up. Your little mute symbol, like the way I have you cropped, your little mute symbol actually showed up. I'm gonna eat that. There you go. There was just a
Yeah.
mute symbol on me suddenly.
Mm.
I got rid of it, so it's fine. So we then cut over to Zoro and Karoo shtick, which is great, where Zoro has decided he's going to do some ice water training. So he's talking about that, and he's trying to convince Kaoru to like join him in the training. And Kaoru's like, "Are you fucking nuts? I'm not that kind of duck." And then Kaoru looks away, and then looks back, and Zoro's just fucking gone. So he runs over to the side, looks in the water, and Zoro just doesn't surface. Like Zoro's gone down into the water, and he's gone. And Kaoru, of course, imagines Zoro has just fucking died. Like he went in the water, had like hypothermic shock, and is dying. So Kaoru dives into the water, and Zoro just pops up on the other side of the boat, like, "Oh, damn, it's cold, but this will be good training." uh, which is very funny.
I thought
Um,
Karu got pushed in, but okay, maybe I remembered wrong.
sorry, go ahead.
Like I thought Karu got pushed off of the ship into the water.
No, no, no. He dives in trying to save Zoro.
Oh,
Karu heroically dives in to try and save Zoro because he thinks Zoro has drowned. He thinks Zoro has gone into like hypothermic shock and is like sinking to the bottom of the lake or the river, and Karu jumps in. He might get pushed into the water at some other point, but this time is him jumping in intentionally to be a hero. So we cut back to everyone else, um, and we learn a little bit more about the Doctor Exile. We pick up and learn over the course of this episode that uh, this island was actually famous for its medicine and its doctors, which is a weird thing because Dalton said there's only one doctor on this island. And basically, what we determine is that all the doctors who were on this island, except for the 20 best doctors, were exiled. And the king took the 20 best doctors and basically locked them in his castle to be his personal physicians. So basically, if anyone ever got sick or needed medical, like an operation or medicine, they had to come to the king and basically beg and plead and swear loyalty to him forever, or he would just let them die. Basically. Um, After we learn this, Kureha is leaving the town with Chopper pulling her sleigh, and they come across Zoro, who they rightly say, who is this fucking weirdo walking around half naked and soaking wet on this winter island? And there's some great shtick, um, where Zoro like tries to ask them for help and they reject him because he asks a little rudely. Kureha doesn't like being referred to as like an old maid or anything like that. Um, so if you call her like old lady or grandma or anything like that, she tends to hit you pretty hard. So they push on, and Zoro, like, in order to warm up, just starts muscle training, which is just the most Zoro thing ever. He's like, well, I'm really cold. I guess I'll exercise. That'll warm my body up. Um, so we cut back to the town where Dalton and them were going to hopefully meet with Kureha to tell her to head to the castle because Luffy is going to show up with Nami. Um, and I wanted to point something out. This will be very important uh, later in the story. At exactly 19 minutes and 34 seconds, we see a man repairing the door Dr. Kureha kicked in. That man is from Wano Kuni. Uh,
What is Wano Kuni?
Wano Kuni is the most recent story arc in the anime and manga that just
Oh,
finished.
right.
So, like
Okay.
1,000 episodes from now, we will go to this
It,
man's homeland.
the Kuni part confused me, though. I was like, huh?
It basically means the land of Wano or the country of Wano, Wano
Oh,
Kuni.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
okay.
so he's from Wano. This man has showed up at several points throughout the story because Oda just likes to draw this little man. He always has like nails stuck up his nose, and he's a little bald craftsman. Um, he'll show up in different islands across, and then he showed up in Wano as like a character with dialogue, and all the fans like called Oda out like, "Oh my God, that's the same character from this episode and this episode and this episode," and Oda went, "Ah, shit, they noticed." So he basically had to come up with a reason why this character was in all those places. Um, but yeah, I didn't remember exactly when or where that character showed up. So when I saw him there, hunched over repairing the door, I was like, "Holy shit, is that Wano Man?" I think it is,
Well,
which is just great. So
yeah.
the Dalton and them arrive to where the boy was healed. They find out that they missed Kureha again. They like pass each other in the forest, without interacting. However, we see that Walpole and his team have landed, and that the defense force, the Watch, who were who stopped Luffy and the gang, they tried to attack Walpole, but again, they're not a trained military. Like those people, like the ones who shot Vivi in the arm, they wouldn't have stood a chance against the Straw Hats at all. They're not military; they're just civilians with weapons. And the people with Walpole are literally the military for this island. So they just get slaughtered. One man manages to run away, and he finds Dalton and tells him that Walpole has arrived and killed everyone. Um, so we get this moment where Dalton is like furious, um, and he rushes off on his horse to kill Wapple before Wapple can hurt any more of the people or try and take over the country again and ruin the lives of everyone here. And as he's riding his horse at full speed back towards the waterfront to meet with Wapple's forces, towards Bighorn, I think the village is called, he's getting so mad and furious that his body begins to transform in this really animalistic way. And eventually, he jumps off the horse and starts running full speed, now in his complete animal form, because Dalton is a devil fruit user who has a zone fruit. We haven't learned the name of it this episode. I believe we get it next episode. But he basically turns into a bull and begins like outpacing the horse, um, which is cool. This like every time we get introduced to a new Devil Fruit user, it's always pretty pog, pretty exciting. And then we cut back to Luffy and Sanji, who are still trying to make it up the mountain, and the bunnies have gotten ahead of them, and the bunnies are very angrily hopping up and down. And Luffy's like, "What are they doing? Are they hungry? What are these idiots?" But Sanji clues it together that the bunnies are gonna try and create an avalanche to drop on them. Uh, and that's the end of the episode. how did you like this episode? Any comments or anything you wanted to mention? Things I might have missed?
I, I could have sworn that's just two whole episodes you covered there. I saw the avalanche was at the end of the second episode.
I'm sorry, what?
I swear, like when they were starting the avalanche, I swear that was at the end of the second episode.
No, it's at the we're on episode 81, right?
Yeah.
My note says the Bunnylanch ends at like starts at 81,
Weird.
and then 82 starts with them fleeing from the avalanche.
Yeah, that might be how it is actually.
All right. It's hard, especially when you watch them like very closely together. They all tend to sort of run together. Trust me, I have experienced this greatly. However, as we dive into episode 82, before we start talking about the recap, let's discuss not the elephant in the room, but something important. With episode 82, we have a new ending theme. Uh, as most
Yeah,
ending themes right now are only going to last about 10 episodes. So we have a
honestly, I like the previous ending better than this one we have now.
really. I didn't hate this one.
Mm.
I found this one was pretty all right. It's called Before Dawn by Ai Sachi. Um, it had a good flow to it. I felt. Um, we won't have this segment for long though, because I'm pretty sure at one point in the story, One Piece just stops having ending themes. Like they just stop having them. Um,
Um,
which is part of the reason why I found it a little hard to keep track of when a new one started because I'm so used to like modern day One Piece, which hasn't had an ending theme in like 600 episodes or something. Um,
yeah,
yeah, they use that time for more episode, and then they do the next time on One Piece filler like clip at the end, and that's about it. No ending themes. Um, so
at least for
episode
some of the opening theme.
yes, the we will always have good opening themes.
Oh yeah,
The next opening theme doesn't change for a while though. I think this opening we have now might be one of the longest running openings in the show. Like maybe the second or third
mm,
with the most episodes. It'll be a while
yeah,
before it changes.
okay,
Um, which is a shame because I don't, I like some of the endings that come later more than this one. So we open episode 82 with a bit of a recap about the avalanche. The avalanche is happening, and they're sliding down the hill, and everything's going crazy. Um, and everyone's trying to get away. Luffy and Sanji are trying their best while the bunnies are still attacking them on like wooden snowboards made out of trees. Um, and they notice this little cliff in the distance, and they're trying to get to it. Uh, that where the snow is sort of falling around on either side of it. There's an excellent moment where Usopp and Vivi are in their sleigh trying to get to the next town, and they're having a hard time reading the map and the location where they are. Um, and Usopp is trying to focus on riding while Vivi's trying to focus on the map. And she's like, I can't find any landmarks. Like, I don't understand where we are. And Usopp says, "You're a princess, aren't you? Why can't you just do this?" And she gets mad. Is like, "What would being a princess have to do with anything of this?" It's just a really funny little piece of dialogue. And she's like, "Here, you take the map. You do it." And he's like, "I can't." And he acts like very proud that he can't. And she's like, "That's not something to be proud about." Which I find very funny. Um, so they actually, as they say this, Usopp brings up that on the map it says there's a sign which will tell them which path to take to get to the town. And as he says that, we see that they've already passed that sign, which was partially covered in snow, and are now going the wrong direction. Um, we then cut to Bighorn, and Wapple has eaten a lot of the town. He's chewed up a lot of buildings. Um, and done a ton of damage to the people. It's awful. His ward comes up. I forget if it was Marimo or the other one, Chess. I forget their names. Um, I know their names don't matter. They don't matter. Those two idiots don't matter. Um, one of them comes up and informs Walpole um, that Kureha has taken residence in his castle. He's managed to gather intel from probably torturing some of the civilians, which sets Walpole off on a rage that Kureha would dare defile his castle. At which point, Dalton shows up, jumping in midair, takes a massive swing with his stupid paddle axe that he carries with him that has a really weird design, and cuts Wapple clean down the chest, saying that, you know what, it's time for us to pay for our sins. We let these people down. It's time for you to die. I'm not going to let you take over this country again now that you've abandoned it, kind of deal. And I just wrote in my notes that he should have gone for the head a la Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War, whichever one of those movies came first, where Thor stabs Thanos in the chest instead of hitting him in the head, and fucks up. And I just wrote that he definitely should have went for the head. Uh, because Wapple is severely injured, but then the 20 doctors, the Ishii 20, show up and they all say, like, preparing for an operation. And they're all in really stupid outfits and their designs are all super generic. Like, Oda definitely had an idea for what he wanted Wapple's, like, 20 doctors to be, but clearly had no vision for them. Um, which is weird for him. So they show up and immediately begin like an emergency surgery where they like stitch up his chest a bit, and then like staple metal plates to him. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like something doctors would do. Like, these doctors seem like hacks. Also, why didn't they just kill him if the doctors are also being oppressed by this man? Like, any one of them could easily just like kill him while they're doing an operation. It's kind of bullshit. So we find out from the soldiers reacting to Dalton's presence that he has the ox fruit model bison. Um, is this the first zone fruit we've come across in the story?
I've not heard of the term before, so I would think so. Yes.
Because I know we get introduced to Chopper, who has a zone fruit, and we got introduced to Dalton, who had a zone fruit. I'm just trying to think in my head. I think most of the fruits we've seen up until this point have been Paramecia and Logia. So zone fruits come in all sorts of flavors, and they have different models. So you could be the ox fruit model bison, and someone else could have the ox fruit model giraffe, right? Like, in theory,
Mm.
right? So that is sort of how these fruits work. Zone fruits also have two special categories, but they will come up later in the story. So the reason why, if you see a character say that they have a something something fruit model something, it's a zone fruit, and like the base fruit is like the family of animal they are, and the model is the specific species they are, I guess. So we find out that Dalton has the bison fruit. Um, and yeah, so he completely dispatches like a whole battalion of the soldiers like it's nothing. It's very clear that the average soldier doesn't match up to Dalton at all, especially with his devil fruit. Like, they're too slow, they're too sluggish, they're weak, they have nothing on him. However, the two idiots who are with Wapple are strong enough to be like, we beat you before, we can do it again. Though I imagine Dalton didn't try his hardest the first time, in theory. However, at this point, some of the civilian militia show up and they begin rushing to help Dalton fight the military and take down Wapple because, again, they all respect Dalton and believe he's a good person and want him to be their ruler, and they want Wapple to die. However, they're idiots because they forgot Dalton is an idiot who thinks that their lives are all worth more than his life, no matter what. Because he has a lot of self-esteem issues, and a lot of guilt issues. So, of course, the minion with the bow is like, I know your biggest weakness, Dalton. And he turns to shoot the civilians and he fires three, like, super arrows at them. And Dalton, being the idiot, just jumps in the line of fire and takes three massive arrows to the chest. Um, and everyone's like, Dalton, why? And he's like, even though I'm the only one who could possibly beat these people, you idiots who will just die when I die are worth saving at the cost of my life, even though as soon as I die, you'll just die on your own. And I'm just like, this was not thought out, Dalton. You're kind of an idiot. Which is my note in my book. I just wrote he's a bit of an idiot. That is my notes for this scene. Um,
Mm.
so we see Zoro, who again is just working out, and at this point we're starting to see the avalanche hitting places, and we see the avalanche coming towards Zoro as he's like like doing like one-armed like push-ups. Um, and Zoro just is like, well, that of course that would happen today. But then Zoro just like keeps trying to do push-ups into the like into the avalanche. And like you hear him like speed up to try and get more done before the avalanche hits him. I just found that very fucking funny. Um so this is when the snowboard bunnies happen right here. So
Mm.
Sanji they are losing a bunch of progress that they were making towards the mountain because of the avalanche. And Sanji is like, the avalanche is getting really bad. So what he does is he kicks Luffy off into a position where he can land on the cliff safely. But in doing that, Sanji sort of pushes himself away and he begins falling into the avalanche with all the bunnies. Like all the bunnies have fucked up and they are getting consumed by the avalanche as well. Luffy, of course, is immediately like, Sanji, you idiot, why didn't you tell me what you're doing? At least then I would have been prepared to catch you. He shoots at his arm to get Sanji, grabs him by the hand, and pulls his glove off. And Sanji gets swallowed by the avalanche. Um,
Yes,
so
rest in peace, Sanji.
yeah, I mean, technically Sanji's back gets broken here. Like it gets brought up later, but he like fractures his spine in this. Like Sanji, out of all the members of the crew, like he gets fucked up a lot. Like surprisingly a lot. For someone who's supposed to be like, and again, this will come up a lot later, but I feel Sanji was originally billed to be about as strong as Zoro. He doesn't feel that way anymore. Zoro feels a lot stronger than he does. And part of it is things that Zoro can do without getting hurt. Sanji ends up getting hurt doing them. And it's kind of annoying because I liked when they were the monster trio. Luffy was stronger than the pair of them, but those two were always super neck and neck. But it's just, and like I don't know what Oda's trying to do, but like I don't know. Sanji just feels weak later on, and it kind of starts around this point where he like breaks his fucking spine. Um, so the avalanche happens. The village gets hit. Um, Wapple runs away on his big old hippo, his snow hippo, with the extendable legs. Um, Vivi and Usopp get hit. They try and run away from their wagon. Zoro gets swallowed up. Um, so in the calm aftermath, we see Wapple eat his way out of the avalanche by just swallowing an absolute mountain of snow and then spitting out his two cohort minions, who he accidentally swallowed. He's like, oh, I thought I tasted something terrible, uh, which is great. So then we've cut over away from them because they decide they're going to head to the castle. And they believe some of the Straw Hats have went there as well, and his plan is to go and kill them. And Kureha and take the castle for himself again. We cut back over to Luffy. Luffy has found Sanji and pulled him up out of the snow. But again, Sanji like is unconscious. Like again, he fractured his spine doing this. Sanji is in a world of hurt. And as he does this, we see the little baby bunny, not too far in the distance, clawing at the snow till its paws are bleeding. And it's clawing at just the extended fingers of its big daddy bunny who got buried in the avalanche. And there's this great scene where Luffy walks towards it, and the rabbit like tries to like protect its daddy, and then Luffy reaches its hands down, and it's afraid. He thinks it's gonna hit it, so he just curls into a ball because it's a little baby. There's a sound. The bunny gets hit on the head with some snow. We pan away from the little rabbit, and we see that Luffy has pulled the big bunny out of the snow so it won't suffocate, and is just walking away. Now carrying Sanji and Nami, um, which is great. And then just towards the end of the episode, Wapol shows up for Luffy as he's carrying Nami and Sanji, and that's the end of the episode. And then we get our new ending before dawn. How did you like this episode with the avalanche?
Sad.
It was sad. I believe you mentioned that you cried with the bunny rabbit scene at the end.
Yeah.
It's a good scene. They really animated that rabbit well. Get ready to see like a lot of blood on fingers because of strain. Not to spoil the next episode. The next
Oh
episode
yeah.
has some scenes.
Right. Oh god, yeah, that. Oh god, no. That
Yeah,
episode
right?
made me shiver. Like,
Right?
ugh.
Right? It's so visceral. You just wince the whole time it happens. I think I hinted this the last time we recorded that there was at least one episode coming up that would make you like physically squeamish. I think I said that in the last recording we did. That was the episode I was talking about, the next episode.
Oh god, it's the part where he's climbing up and then
Yeah,
he
we'll
slides
get to
away
it. We'll
down the
get to it.
thing.
We'll
Yeah,
get to it. We'll get
oh
to it. We'll get
god.
to it. We'll get to it. We don't want to spoil it yet. Uh it's good. It's really good. It's a great moment. There are some amazing moments in the next episode that I really want to talk about. So let's just dive into it.
Says dive into it, proceeds to go silent.
Yes, I'm trying to read my notes. They're very sloppy. Um so Luffy is standing there in front of Wapol and the gang, and he is looking really pissed. Um and he just starts walking past them as Wapol is going on a rant, which is fantastic. He basically tells them to get out of his way and just walks past them. Um, and this is I wrote down it's my first moment where Luffy is carrying Nami and Sanji and walking past them, and he has this like dead set look on his eyes. And I said this is like my first Luffy moment where I'm like, oh, my baby is gonna die doing this shit moment. That is my exact note. I wrote Luffy's first, oh, my baby is gonna die doing this moment. Um, so they of course attack him. And because they can clearly see he is carrying someone who is very sick and very injured, they just start trying to kill Nami and Sanji to finish them off, to like deliver a coup de grace because these people are scum. And Luffy is like every time he goes to attack, anytime he goes to push away from them, like Sanji's words echo in his head like Professor Oak telling you to get off your fucking bicycle in a building. And he's like, now is not the time, Luffy. um so Luffy is like pushed to his limit and he's like just trying to run away. But again, they're all natives to this snowy island and trained fighters. Like these people aren't weak as much as Wapol is an idiot. Um, so they start using like snow tactics and snow camouflage and jumping up on Luffy all over the place. And he's getting pushed against the wall when suddenly the bunnies show up to the rescue. Um, which is fantastic. Um, the bunnies show up and it's great. And Wapol and his gang are like, "What? They would never protect a human. Lupins are like vicious carnivores. They never form bonds with humans." And I wrote down that this is kind of egregious, but we get a full about 1.5 minutes of the last episode in this episode. Like as he's saying this, it replays the whole scene of Luffy, like some of them fighting the rabbits and then Luffy pulling the big bunny out of the snow. We get almost 2 full minutes of the last episode in this episode. And I'm just like, that's kind of egregious. You literally used like 2 minutes in the middle of this episode to replay the last episode. I just felt that was a bit much. Um,
Mhm.
and then I just wrote down the bunny protect. Um, and so the bunnies attack Wapple and the gang, and they're clearly not going to be strong enough to take him out, like obviously, because they clearly weren't a threat to Luffy and Sanji other than the fact that Luffy couldn't fight. Like, if Luffy and Sanji were able to go all out, there's no way those bunnies would have ever been a threat, even with the avalanche. And we know that Wapple is an idiot but strong with a powerful devil fruit. Um, However, we cut away from that, and Luffy has managed to make it to the base of the hill, to the base of the Drum Mountain upon which the castle is. And I just wrote in my notes, Luffy makes it to the mountain. Pain time. So Luffy
Mm.
kicks off his sandals and then begins to, with Sanji dangling in his mouth, holding him by his shirt with his teeth, and Nami strapped to his back, bare finger and bare toe scale a straight sheer cliff face in a blizzard. So, I in my notes, I want to talk about something about Luffy that I wrote in my notes here. So, Luffy is a character with many sides and facets to his character, which is fantastic because on the surface, Luffy seems really like two dimensional and like one note. He's the kooky, crazy guy who loves fighting. He's the Goku of the cast, right? Like, he just wants to do the adventure
Mhm.
thing and, always find the next big guy to fight. Like, where's Crocodile? Let me at him, you know? Um, but see, Luffy actually has many different sides. There is a side of Luffy where he's the captain of the crew. We very rarely get to see that side. Very rarely. Most of the time, Nami feels more like the captain than he does. And then there's the side we get to see of Luffy the most, which is like the adventurous child. And that is often when he's around Usopp and he's playing games and he's making jokes or they're partying after a huge adventure. And it's just Luffy just being free and loving his life. Then there is a third side to Luffy, which I just have written in my notes as the man who will be king. And that's the moments where Luffy sort of loses both of those pretenses of just being a captain and just being an adventurous child in love with freedom and adventure. And we very occasionally get to see moments where Luffy is surpassing all human limits on sheer will and the absolute chutzpah to not let the people he cares about die. And I like to refer to that Luffy as the man who will be king. So, we see Luffy climbing up the mountain, and it's brutal. And he's holding Sanji with his teeth. And at one moment, he drops Sanji. He, like, slides, his finger goes limp or something. He grabs a hold and it breaks. And his bare feet and hands are scraping down the side of the mountain, and it's bloody. It is.
I
We
hate
we
it. I hate it.
we rarely see this much blood in One Piece. Like, ever. Like, One Piece is not a very bloody show. It has its
It's
bloody
like I hate.
moments, but this was like painfully brutal.
It's like I hated it because it was like you could just imagine it, like
You
these
could feel it.
fingernails and toenails scraping off when you're sliding down. It's like, ugh,
You
I
can
hate
feel
it.
it. You can like you curl your toes and your hands clench and you have a visceral reaction, which is like great sound design, great animation, great story because we're so invested. We're feeling Luffy's pain. So he slides down the mountain and it's just a smear of blood. And like Sanji pops out of his teeth and he whips his head down to grab him and pull him back up again. And then he just starts climbing again. And I'm just like, the look on his face as he's doing this is like, that isn't the adventurous kid. That isn't the captain of a ship. That is the man who will be king. That is the look of a man who has the will to go the distance and achieve his dream. And it's just like, oh, other than the pain, this moment is so fucking rad. um, so we cut back over to Vivi and Usopp, which is fantastic. Vivi manages to pull Usopp out of the snow, but she believes he's dead. or about to die as he begins talking about like crossing the river and getting to the light on the other side. So she beats him above the head and face to his head is swollen to the size of like a small boulder. Um, which is very funny. They make it back to the village where the soldiers are basically like climbing their way out of the avalanche and getting ready to kill all the civilians, and all the civilians are like try and dig up Dalton so they can try and save him. Um, and Zoro shows up again, half naked and freezing, and I have this is a really good dialogue between Usopp and Zoro, where Zoro like asks Usopp like, "Those are the guys who attacked the ship, right?" And Usopp's like, "Yeah, I think so." He's like, "So they're our enemies, right?" And Usopp's like, "Well, they're not really our allies, so yeah, I guess they're our enemies." He's like, "So they're the bad guys, right?" And Usopp's like, What are you talking about?" He's like, "They are, right?" And Usopp's like, "Yeah, I guess." And then Zoro just attacks them, steals their winter clothes, and it's just like, "Ah, much better." And Usopp's like, "Is that why you were asking all the questions? So you wanted to know if it was morally okay for you to go beat them up and steal their clothes?" And
Yeah.
it's a great moment. And then he just looks at the rest of the soldier. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm gonna beat the shit out of all of you." And then he does. Um, and he basically single handedly takes out the whole militia. There's a sick guitar riff, and I'm like, "God damn, this guitar riff, man!" It's like, I'm like, sweet Jesus,
Yeah.
they really like. I forgot how often they use this in early One Piece. Which is great. I love it. I just wrote down that he's looking hot as fuck. I don't know at what moment he was looking hot as fuck. Oh, it was when he was facing them down. There's just a moment where he like smiles at them all and says like a really sick ass line, and I'm like, damn, Zoro can get it. I was just like, oh, Zoro's kind of hot in this scene. Zoro's a little sexy right now. Not that he ever isn't sexy, but you know, he's also an idiot a lot of the time, and that kind of gets in the way with it for me. I know some people find that particularly attractive, but you know, the world takes all sorts. Um, uh, so I then wrote down the pain, Luffy, please, it hurts, because it's it's real bad. We see Luffy get to the top, and he is like a broken shell of a man. He gets to the top and begins to black out and fall backwards off the mountain. And for just a minute, like just a frame, your heart jumps into your throat. And you're like, there's no way. Like if he goes over the mountain, like they're all dead. He'll die to the elements. Nami and Sanji will die in the fall. And then Chopper grabs him from off screen and he goes a little stretchy and he pulls him up. And he's safe. Now there is a scene here where I will cry. I do cry a little bit. So we then cut inside the castle, and Chopper is talking to Kureha, and they're discussing the pair of them. And this is where we find out that Sanji has like a fractured spine and whatnot. Luffy has intense like hyperthermia. They're putting him on warm water. But they say that Nami is in the worst condition out of either of them, and they find out that she has something called a Kestria or a Kestia, um, which we'll find out more about later. Uh, which is fantastic. So it all fades to black. The Korea tells him to get like a specific medicine, and he does. And then we cut to Nami waking up in a bed. Um, and as she does, she notices Chopper in the room, and it's just like Dare, and Chopper's like, ah! And he's in this little chibi human form. Which, if you've ever seen merchandise of Chopper, you know what this looks like.
Yeah, so yeah, I've seen it
This is
before. It's
this
very
is
cute.
this is the Chopper you will see most of the time until time skip, and then you know the time skip version will be slightly bigger. Uh, so you see Chopper in all his little cute, adorable, sell all the merchandise in the world glory, and he's clearly afraid of Nami, and he runs around a corner to hide, but he's an idiot. So he hides the wrong way behind the wall, where most of his body is jutting out into the open and like half of his head is concealed instead of the other way around where most of his body is concealed and half of his head is exposed. And Nami's like, "You're hiding the wrong way." Uh, and he turns around, and that's about the end of the episode. That's where my notes end, at least. How did you like 83? Besides, of course, the moments of intense pain.
Um, Chopper's adorable. That's all I have to say on the matter.
Chopper Chopper is admittedly very cute. I used to have a very good Chopper figurine in his Strong World outfit, which I think is like the 10th movie they did. It's my favorite movie. I haven't seen Film Red yet though. Film Red might take it. I don't know. Which is like
That's just coming
blasphemy.
out in theaters soon.
I mean, it's already been out in theaters. It's been out in
Oh,
November. It's been out here since August. I just haven't been able to. I wasn't able to go to it. The one time I tried to go to it, the show had already started by the time we got to the movie theater, and the next showing was too late for us to go to it. Um, and I have terrible depression and ADHD. If I'm not at work, I just sit at home and I don't go anywheres. Um, so getting out to watch it myself, I don't know if Feel Red will become my favorite. The music seems pretty banging though. But out of every other movie that I have seen, Strong World is my favorite film.
I
Uh,
don't know if it's in the movie or in one of the episodes, but uh, you know Otto, like the artist that did Usawa.
who did what? Sorry.
She made that performed the song Usawa.
No, I don't know that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, she's a good artist, and she's made a song called Genesis, I believe, for One Piece.
I
Really
didn't know
good.
that. Did you know that Avril Lavigne did
It's
a
in the
song for a
really
One Piece
late
movie?
episodes. It's in the really late episodes.
I will
Who
I will
made
be
this
sure to look it
song?
up. Do you to just repeat my point? Do you know Avril Lavigne?
Oh yes, I know Avril Lavigne.
Avril Lavigne did a song for One Piece too.
Oh boy.
It was in one of the movies. I don't think it was in Strong World. I think it was in the movie after that. She did a cover of her ex-husband's song, I believe, for One Piece. She did "How You Remind Me" from Nickelback. She did a cover of that song, I think, for One Piece, for one of the films. It played like during the credit scenes or something like that, I think. Which blew me away. I was like, why is Avril Lavigne credited in this movie? I was like, wait, what? Um, but we're ahead of ourselves. We might get to the movies at some point. Um, so we start episode 84 right where we left off. Um, Chopper is hiding from Nami and she's just trying to talk to him because like she's used to weird shit. Like, have you seen Luffy? Um, like so she's like, all right, weird talking furry animal thing. Okay, whatever. Maybe that's just a thing on the Grand Line. Fun fact: it is. We will discover that there are a race of people on the Grand Line that are called minks, who are just anthropomorphized animals. Like Oda just creates a race of furry people that are just straight up animals but people um
Mm.
on the Grand Line, but Chopper is not one of those people, as we'll find out over the next two episodes. So she's just like, "Hey, you helped me, right? You were the person taking care of me." Because again, Nami is very sharp at adjusting to her situation and picking up on audio cues and whatnot. And there's some great shtick between her and uh Chopper where he's like, "Aren't you afraid of me?" or something like that, and it's just really good. Um, Chopper, we've discovered, is a blue-nosed reindeer, and that's what he is. Um, he runs off at some point, and Kureha comes in and sits with Nami, and we get her shtick again about how old she is. And Nami is like, "No, I didn't ask. Thank you, though." Like she's like, "Oh, the secret of my youth. You want to know?" And Nami's like, "I didn't ask. Thank you, though." So then we find out about what happened to Nami, and that she had an infection, a parasite, something like that, a virus called a Kestia, which was an ancient infection and was believed to have gone extinct a very long time ago. And that She probably would have gotten it by, walking around with her stomach exposed on some ancient island. And she's like, and the doctor Kara was like, yeah, but there's no way anyone would be that stupid. And then Nami just goes, and then we cut to her walking around in just her bikini top on Little Garden in the scene where she gets bit on the stomach. And I remember when we covered those episodes, I went, hey, look, Nami has a bug bite. That'll be important later. Well, here it is. Um, and Kureha basically says that uh, one, Nami was extremely close to dying. That Kestia is considered like a 10-day illness because after 10 days you get perfectly better. And Nami's like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, after 10 days you're dead, so you don't feel any more symptoms. And Nami's like, oh, yikes. um, Kureha said that even with most advanced medicines, it would probably take you a week to recover fully, but because it's her medicine, you'd still need 3 days. And you can tell that Nami, doesn't want to stay for the 3 days, but Kureha pins her to the ground in kind of an erotic scene and holds a scalpel to her neck and says, either you leave my house cured or you leave my house dead. And I'm like, Granny's hot. Granny ain't fucking
Well,
around. Granny pulled the scalpel on Nami and pinned her to the ground, and it was just kind of erotic.
I swear it was 5 days before you
It
die,
might
and
it
then
might be 5 days.
I think it was five. I
I
don't
didn't
know.
write down the number of days. I'm just going off memory loosely.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
it could be 5 days. 5 days probably works out a lot better. So we then get our flashback because Kureha brings up something about Luffy and Sanji, who I believe are both chasing Chopper at this point because Luffy is hungry and Sanji is saying, no, 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 Luffy, let me get him. We have to cook venison correctly if we're gonna serve it for Nami. Hold up, you can't just eat it raw. You gotta let me take care of this meat. And Chopper is running around like an idiot. Um, but as she's saying this, we get a flashback, and this moment is one of the moments that'll make me cry, where Chopper and Kureha are taking Nami and Sanji to treat them, and they're talking about their problems, and Kureha, before anything else, tells Chopper to take care of Luffy to put him in warm water, immediately. And Luffy grabs Chopper or her, I don't remember who he grabs, and he is on death's door. This is the worst we've seen Luffy up to this point in the story. And he's crying and he's just a fucking wreck. And he grabs a hold of them. And Kureha is like, I'll take care of them, don't worry. And Luffy is just like, please save them, they're my friends. And even now, as I say that, I'm tearing up. It's Luffy is literally dying, and the only thing he can expend his energy on is telling this person to save his friends no matter what. And that's the kind of shit that gets me. That's a great moment. So I really like that. It's very good. Uh, so we cut back to the boys. Um, Chopper is fending them off as they're running around. Um, because again they're trying to cook him. We find out that he has a devil fruit at this point in the story. We find out he has the human fruit, a zone fruit. Whoever eats it becomes a human, sort of, or gains human traits. So we discover that Chopper isn't a human who ate a reindeer fruit and just chooses to always look like a reindeer. No, he is a reindeer who ate a human fruit, and therefore he's able to look and move and mimic a human while being actually a reindeer, which is Mite. We cut away from the castle, though, for them to dig up Dalton, who, again, was impaled in the chest with 3 massive arrows, and they believe he's dead. which is great. However, I believe the Ishin 20 show up and they're like, let us save him. If anyone has a chance to save this country, it's Dalton. Like, you all realize that we're just kind of being forced to work for Walpole. Like, we don't want him to be in power either. We just, we have an oath to just save people, so let us save Dalton. So we cut back to Luffy, who's demanding Kureha join his crew, which is fucking hilarious. I love this whole interaction. And it's just being rowdy as fuck. It's great. Um, so it's just great. They're just being rowdy and causing a lot of racket, and Kureha's chasing people around. She brings up how there's snow in the castle, which is great, and then Chopper shows up. Um, again, hiding from everyone else. Uh, and this is where Luffy sort of clues in that like he's cold again, which is very funny to me. Um, and so this is a really great moment where Chopper is again like checking in on Nami, making sure she's okay, pushing her back down onto the bed and whatnot. And Nami like tries to seduce him. Like Nami tries to seduce the reindeer. She tries to steal him and basically invites him to join the crew. In her mind, she can leave Kureha's cares early if she has Chopper, a proper doctor, on the crew with her to make sure that she doesn't relapse or anything. Uh, and Chopper, of course, freaks out. He's like, "Aren't you scared of me?" And she's like, "Are you trying to scare me? Cause no, I've definitely seen worse than you in my life." Um,
Oh yeah.
and he's like, "But I'm an animal, but I walk and talk like a person, and animals don't talk." And she's like, "So?" And then there's just this really great moment where Chopper is like, cause he like freaks out when she asks him. He like runs back and knocks some shit over cause he's very clumsy. Um, and he's just sort of sitting there like a little kid who's like dealing with his insecurities, with his like face in his chest, and he just says, "And my nose is blue too." Like that matters to her or any human in the world more than just him being a reindeer who can talk. Um, but it's a
And
really
then the
great
meat.
line. It's a really
Yeah.
great line and it's delivered very well. And I just wrote in my notes, Nami's like, "Ooh, shiny Pokemon are so rare."
Mm.
I was just like, well, Nami
And
found the
then
shiny Chopper.
yeah, and then as soon as he's sad about his blue nose, the meat hunt starts again.
Yeah, the boys show up and begin chasing her for more meat.
Yeah.
So then we get a great moment, and I absolutely love this moment where Kureha comes back into the room and sits down next to Nami, and is like complaining about the boys' energy, like Sanji and Luffy, and they're just endless energy. And then she looks at Nami and she's like, "I'm not entirely thrilled with you trying to steal my man either." And Nami's like, "Do I need to ask for permission to go after a man?" And I'm like, "Nami, I know you were like playfully kind of hitting on him, but the way you say that kind of makes it sound like you're actually hitting on him. Like, calm down. He's like 14. He's like a kid, Nami. Stop it."
I didn't even know Chopper's. I didn't even know Chopper had an age.
Yeah, he's like 14 or 12 before the time skip, something like that. He's the youngest member of the crew for sure. Um, he's not legally an adult, but he's also a reindeer, so I don't think human I don't know if the human age of consent works on him, but Nami needs to calm down. Um, and
Reindeer laws got reindeer laws got to be different.
I don't think they have any
I
rules
don't
other than
know.
the whole bestiality thing, but that's its own can of worms.
Ugh.
Um, more power
Yeah.
to Nami. She likes what she likes. Girl, go off. Um, so Kureha's like laughs at that because Nami, clearly said the line about needing to ask for permission to go after a man as a joke. Um, and not a joke, but clearly deflecting. And Kureha's like, "No, go for it. Absolutely. If anyone can maybe try and do this, then they should." And Kureha does this like cryptic thing about how Chopper is a man trapped between two worlds. And as this is happening and she's saying this, we cut away and we see that Luffy and Sanji realize there's snow in the castle and it's cold. and they go to close the door. And Chopper's like yelling at them to stop, but not explaining why they should stop. He's just yelling at them, which, again, he's a kid who has a troubled past. Like, he doesn't know how to communicate effectively. But typically, if you're trying to tell someone not to do something, explaining why is better than just saying no. Rudy, your model is like trying to kiss me. It's a little odd. Hey. So, I think Rudy died. Rip. Rip and pepperonis. So, there's this great moment where Luffy and Sanji realize why the door was open. And it's because that a bird had made its nest on the door sill and it had its chicks in it. And the chicks have hatched, the eggs have hatched into little baby chicks. And if you close the door, you would knock the nest off of its perch. I still think it'd be pretty easy to just reach up and take the nest down and move it to a safer location, but they don't do that for whatever reason. And Luffy and Sanji are like, oh, wow, okay, he didn't want us to close the door because it would hurt these birds. Well, we're not going to close the door then. We're not assholes. And Chopper, realizing they're not going to close the door because they realized why it was open, begins to walk away. And then it hits Sanji and Luffy like a delayed reaction that Chopper was talking at them. Like, he was yelling at them. He was speaking words to them, which he's been doing this whole time. They just haven't clued in because all they could see was meat. Um, And they also realized that Chopper at one point transformed into this big, massive, bulky version to yell at them louder. And they're like, "Oh my god, that animal was just talking. That deer was talking, and he was transforming." And the two of them look at each other and are like, "It's a monster!" And this is like a big PTSD word for Chopper. And it like, you just see him like actively like he gets cut in the heart as they say that, and he's just walking away and he hears Luffy say it again and again. It hits. But here's the thing. Chopper then gets out of earshot before hearing the rest of their conversation, because the second Luffy calls him a monster, right after that Luffy's like, "What a funny, interesting fellow. Let's have him join the crew. I like him." Right? And it's this thing where Chopper only hears the bad part of what Luffy was saying, which is the word monster, which is again a triggering word for Chopper, as we'll find out in the next episode. It's tied up in a lot of trauma Chopper has. And he only hears what Luffy is saying when it's reaffirming the negative part that he already has about himself. And then he gets out of earshot when Luffy's like, "What an interesting guy. Let's make him our friend." Right? And that's the end of the episode. We end with like Luffy declaring that he's gonna make Chopper his crewmate, which, spoiler alert, is probably gonna happen. And that's episode 84. Any comments for this episode? Now that I think you're back with me?
Uh, not really. Not
No,
many comments.
it was a good episode. Uh, so we begin episode 85, which is fantastic. Uh, and by the way, the next episode, I believe, episode 86, that's where I start crying. I know Rudy said that they cried a few times during this block of 5 episodes. The next episode fucks me up really bad, and it has one of the moments that I can use to make myself cry basically at any time just by thinking about it. Uh, so that'll be fun. So we begin episode 85 with Luffy being a bit of a tickle monster, which I find very funny. He's like chasing Chopper and like tickling him. And I just wrote down that Luffy is being more aggressive than Nami, which I find very funny. Luffy is like trying to recruit Chopper and coming on to him like a lot more aggressively and direct than Nami was, which Chopper is having a hard time with. Um, and Sanji prepares a meal for Kureha and Nami. And at this point, Kureha begins to explain Chopper's history to Sanji and Nami. And it begins with a man named Dr. Hiraruk, who I love. He is, I wrote in my notes, the hack supreme. So we see this man, Dr. Hiraruk, like magician his way into a building through the fireplace. There is a sick man there, and he pulls out his bag and takes out a needle and like stabs the man. He has a gun which he calls a tranquilizer gun that just looks like a fucking pistol. Um, and he stabs the man with medicine and injects him with it against the man's will. And the man turns like sickly green and begins acting like a frog and like jumps out the window into the cold. And Hiroruki's like, "Oh no, I must have used the wrong ingredient. I thought for sure essence of frog would do the trick." At which point the guards show up and begin, shooting off guns trying to kill him. So he runs off and ends up finding Kureha on a bridge. And she calls him like a quack, and he kind of is. Like really, he's not a doctor properly. Um, and we find out that they are the last two doctors on the island who have avoided the banishment, the exile of all the other doctors. Kureha is just too skilled and masterful; she can't get caught. And Hidaruk is just a fucking nuclear missile. He's just an ICBM running around causing havoc. But he's just good enough at it to avoid getting captured. Um, so he leaves her. They run off because the guards are chasing after them. Um, and as he's running through the forest, he finds Chopper. And Chopper is on the ground, unconscious, mostly, heavily covered in blood and bleeding. And Hidaruk, of course, falls down beside him and he's like, "Oh, you're so lucky. I just came up with a perfect thing for gunshot wounds. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." And he opens his briefcase and begins taking things out. And he takes out the pistol, which again is a tranquilizer gun. And Chopper, seeing the man with the pistol in his hand, gets this vivid flashback of him trying to enter a human village and the humans seeing this furry blue nosed monster and getting their guns and shooting at him and him running away and them chasing him into the woods and literally shooting him. This child. To to cement how angry I am at the people of this island. Um, for killing someone who showed up and did nothing wrong just for looking kind of weird. Which, the fact that they live on an island with a devil fruit user who turns into a fucking cow, these people should be fucking used to. Sorry, I'm getting very upset about this. Um, so he sees the man with the gun, and like animal primal fight or flight takes over, and he just starts beating the shit out of Dr. Hiraruk. He beats the shit out of this man. He hulks him from like the original Avengers movie. He like pulls the Loki thing where he's like grabbing him by the foot and just smacking him on the ground back and forth in every direction. Like he beats the shit out of him, and then just begins walking away. Uh, like just oozing blood. This is a surprisingly bloody arc. Which again isn't something we see a lot of in One Piece, especially as we go later on in the story. Blood sort of only comes up in very specific moments, at least to this extent. Um, but Chopper is still heavily weak, and Hidaruk kind of realizes very immediately it was because he had a gun in his hand, and he gets offended. He's like, "I'm a doctor. Do you really think I would shoot you?" He gets furious, so Hidaruk stands up, strips ass naked in the cold, and yells at Chopper, "I will never shoot you. I'm a doctor. Let me help you." And Chopper turns around and sees this man who has thrown the gun away and all of his clothes and has thrown his arms open wide to show that he doesn't mean he's a threat. Full cock and balls out in the blizzard. And Chopper collapses. Uh, and then I just wrote down that he's a quack with a heart of gold, which is fantastic. And we see Chopper wake up, and this is a sad moment. This is a moment I believe that makes some people cry, not me, but it's a good moment. Chopper wakes up later, and we see him now in his smaller form, in a small little alcove that looks very warm. He's covered in bandages and he's all patched up. And he looks around and he sees the doctor is asleep in the corner. And like you can see that he's still kind of scared, and you hear his stomach rumble and you see him like blush because he's hungry. And on the table beside him is a glass of milk and like a whole loaf of bread. And you see Chopper take the loaf of bread and sit down at the foot of the bed and just start to eat it and cry. And all right, you know what? It's actually making me tear up a little bit saying it. Uh, I think because it's tied to an AMV that I really like an old anime music video. uh, where they show like all the Straw Hats' tragic backstories, and this was the scene they used for Chopper, is him crying while he eats the bread. So maybe it's hitting me a little extra right now describing it, but it's a little act of kindness, and it just shatters Chopper's entire worldview as he just sits there eating food that was given to him for nothing and crying over it. And it's fantastic. We cut along and we see Chopper talking to Hitterduke, and it took like apparently 3 days for Chopper to talk to him, which is great. Um, and Chopper's like, well, every other time I tried to talk to someone, they shot me. And Hitterduke is like, fair point. All right, I understand why you wouldn't want to talk to me. I understand. So we see that Hiruruk is working on some mad science that goes horribly wrong, and he yells, "Get down, Chopper, quick!" And they jump out the window as a huge explosion goes off. Um, and they land outside, and Hiruruk makes a joke about them getting out okay, and then Chopper gets bonked on the head by a brick, and Hiruruk starts to laugh, and then he gets bonked on the head by a brick. And as they're laying there, and Chopper's like rubbing his sore head, he says, "Why do you call me Chopper?" Because again, he doesn't know what that word means. And Hiroruk says, "Well, Tony Chopper, I think that's what I'll call you. It's your name." And he's like, "It's because you have such great antlers that could chop down great strong antlers that could chop down a tree." And I'm just like, "Oh my heart, this is so fucking wholesome." So that is how Tony Chopper got his name. Um, so we see some Looney Tune shtick of them. So Chopper begins helping Hiruruk to administer his medicine to people and running away. And there's a moment where they're running away from the guards, and he says, "All right, Chopper, we need to execute our distraction strategy." And Chopper's like, "What's that?" And he just fucking kicks Chopper into the guards. He's like, "I'm sorry," and he runs away, which is fucking fantastic. And then we cut away, and Chopper has clearly gotten away because he's, a deer and can probably outrun a guardman on foot if he wants. And Chopper is back in the house with him, and they're yelling at each other. And Chopper's like, "You threw me away. You could have got me killed." And Hiruru's like, "You got away fine. It's all right." And they actually get into like a Looney Tunes fight, like one of those ball fights where there's no details and it's just a dust cloud. And every so often, one of them pops into the cloud and like takes a deep breath and pants and wipes the sweat off their brow and then jumps back into the fight. It's really stupid. It's good shtick. Um, and then at the end of it, they like make up and Hiru commends that this is, the first fight you've ever been in, uh, with someone you care about, and he gives him his hat, his iconic pink hat with the cross, which is very Chopper, and Chopper puts it on his head, and his antlers poke through it, which is fantastic. Um, so we find some really great things. And we discovered that Hiroruk begins talking about a man who was dying one day, and he tells this story like it's a myth. Um, he begins talking about this myth about a rogue, a thief, a pirate, a master criminal who was sick and dying, and despite all the money he'd stolen over the years, he could not find a doctor who could cure him. And then one day he stumbled upon an island and he found this beautiful cherry blossom tree. And after seeing it, it reinvigorated the man, and he went to the doctors, and the doctor said that he was fine, like perfectly cured. Um, and he says that he tells Chopper that he should go out to sea one day and see the world. And it's this beautiful scene where like Chopper's like sitting on his shoulders, and he's like pointing out to the ocean and trying to explain with his hand just how small the Drum Island is compared to the rest of the world. Which is again, it's like a huge father-son moment. It's really great. And then we cut back a few weeks later into the house, and Chopper has all his bandages removed, and here's like, "You're perfectly fine. You're fully recovered. Um, all right, it's time for you to leave." And Chopper's like, "What?" He's like, "Well, you're healed. You're no longer injured. I don't have any moral obligation to take care of you as a patient anymore. I have to get back to my work and focus. So it's time for you to leave. And
I'm
Chopper
so
like
sorry, Frank.
I don't cry here, but like I get it. So Chopper's like banging on the door trying to get in, and you just see Hiraruk like crying on the inside of the door, like trying to refuse, like. And then you hear something happen to Chopper, and he opens the door, and you can tell immediately that he's panicked. And you see that Chopper has like jumped off the balcony to their hideaway spot and hurt himself, so that the doctor would take him in and heal him again and keep him there. And Hiraruk like realizes like Chopper will like basically kill himself to be in there, like. And also like as someone who claims to be a doctor, that must be infuriating, right? Like if I was a doctor and like someone who was perfectly healthy hurt themselves so they could be close to me, I would lose my shit. And Hiraruk realizes that he doesn't have any choice, so he pulls out a gun and takes a shot near Chopper. Not at him, but near him. And it sort of snaps Chopper out of his crying and his pain. Because again, he has a lot of trauma around guns. And it's just this horrible moment where Hiraruk, like, cocks the gun again and is like telling Chopper to run and live his life, go out to sea, get out of here, don't come back. And he like shoots the gun again, and Chopper runs off. And once Chopper's out of sight, like Hiraruk, like shaking hands, drops the gun and like falls to his knees, crying over what he's done. And it's a really great moment. Um, so the next thing we see is Hiraruk in a house talking to Kureha, and we discover in this conversation that he was the pirate who found the cherry blossom and was cured of his terminal illness. But and we had seen him cough up blood earlier in this episode, which is like big anime triggers that death is coming for this character when they cough up blood. It's the thing that shows that the character is sick. Same thing happens with Itachi, right? It's the subtle nod that something is wrong with this character that we don't know the details about. So we find out that from the story he told Chopper, he is the pirate who was terminally ill, who could not get cured, who found the cherry blossom tree, and it bought him many years of life. And he explains to Kureha that he's almost perfected his science, that he will be able to make sakura bloom in his home island in Drum, and it will cure the hearts of the people which have become sick. And she's like, of course, immediately like, are you an idiot? It's like this is a winter island. Like things like like cherry blossoms don't bloom here. It's impossible, you idiot. Um, and he, of course, uh, says he's going to do it. He asks her to tell him how much time he has left, and she like at first like refuses to tell him, and then he pushes her a little bit, and she tells him like exactly. And I don't remember because it's not in my notes, but I think he asks her to take care of Chopper. I don't know if he asks her to take care of him here or if that's something that happens later. Uh,
I don't know.
if it happens later, then I'm sorry. It's in next episode, and I'm misremembering.
Might be.
Yeah, I don't remember. But Chopper overhears this conversation, and he realizes that Hiraruk is sick and dying. So he sets off towards the next episode. And it's either the next episode or the second next episode where I'm going to break down into a crying mess. But that is the end of this episode. How did you like it?
That was nice.
Yeah, was it a
I
good
like,
cry?
yeah, I like the relationship between Shiryu and Chopper.
It's it's really good.
Very nice.
It's 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 fantastic. They go from being like they're basically father and son in a way that rarely gets to be enjoyed in anime. And it's
Mm.
for a very brief amount of time, sadly. Uh, but I also just love Haruruk as just a character who, again, like he is not like my favorite character, but if someone said like, which character in One Piece like makes the biggest impact on you as a person, I would probably be like Luffy then Hiruruk. I would be like it probably goes Luffy then Hiruruk as like the actions of this character and how they live their life have affected me as a person and how I try to live my life the most. He's just a really good man and a great character. And I'm really looking forward to having a good cry this week when I watch for the next recording session. All right, I think we should wrap this episode up because that static is still really loud.
Wait, there's static? Not again.
Oh yeah, the whole time, the whole that never went away.
What? It didn't show up in my Discord or anything.
Yeah, no, it never went away. That's okay. I turned you down on my end a few times when I was like doing long stretches of talking, and I turned you back up whenever it sounded like you were about to say something. But I was hearing it the whole time, even if other people weren't. Yeah, I like muted the OBS thing where it was like picking up what I'm hearing, so they weren't hearing the static, but I was definitely still hearing it the whole time, even now. That's fine. That happens. Everything's a little scuff sometimes. We all gotta be a little scuff sometimes.
Yeah, I guess.
It's fine. So we'll be back with the next episode at some point. I am trying now. Of course, I say this now, but by the time you hear this, hopefully I would have already done it, and this will make no sense. But I am going to hopefully schedule a our backlog of episodes to upload and go live at set times each week. Um, so
Mm.
so we can start trying to catch up in terms of our actual release schedule. Because I've been really slacking on that because of the whole Pokemon stuff, which has just consumed my life. Uh,
Understandable.
yeah, I caught 30 shinies this week. It's been busy. All right, we're gonna end the episode here so I can make the static go away. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.